Welcome to AURN Digital and our Roundtable on LGBTQ Pride. My name is Tashan Lovemore, and I feel phenomenal.
My name is Doreen Pierre, and I'm feeling loved.
My name is Marwa here, and I'm feeling grateful.
My name is Josh, or Joshy, and I feel like a warrior.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me. Today we're discussing LGBTQ diasporic experiences in the household. What are some similarities and what are some differences that we may face?
Okay, got it.
Well, I mean, I could start with myself. I was brought up in a Caribbean household. Well, my mom was a single mother, so predominantly Caribbean household, and then my father's side is American. And dealing with, I guess, coming out to my mom, well, I came out to my dad first, actually, the American side. And that was pretty cool because he was he was welcoming, he was open, he was fine with it. My dad actually told me to masturbate when I was a kid, so he's really like, he told me, you can't know your body better, you need to know your body better before anybody else knows your body. So that was his opening to me, and I was 13, it was overwhelming for me, but it was a good lesson. So talking to him about my sexuality was easy, and then even when it came down to my identity, it was very easy. My mom's side, on the other hand, because of what she was taught and with her upbringing, she was very close. She didn't talk to me for a little bit. When my grandmother found out, was a really religious woman, you know, in church every Sunday. I was in church with her every Sunday, up until a certain point too, because I stopped going because I didn't want to be around her and her seeing my changes. My grandmother, interestingly enough, she was curious. She wanted to see if it was a phase. That was the first thing. Are you sure? Mm-hmm. Is this a phase? Is it this? Is it that? And I was just like, nah, grandma, this is me. So she took her time with it. She still showed me love as well. But my grandfather, he doesn't know what I look like to this day. I've been seeing my grandfather over 15 years.
Where is he? Do you know?
They're both in Florida. But
Okay.
I've seen my grandmother. My grandmother comes to New York often.
Oh, okay.
He has back issues, so he doesn't come out here as often. But he hasn't seen me. No pictures. He's been asking. He wants to know what I look like. He's wondering why he hasn't seen me so long. Mm-hmm. My grandmother said we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I don't know when we're gonna cross that bridge.
He's been asking about former you.
He doesn't. I don't even know if he knows of Tashan.
Right.
My grandmother knows it, and she keeps everything to. I mean, if he sees this now, he knows. But no, he has. There's like this big. I don't know if there's this thing where she feels like he won't understand, if he will ostracize me. I mean, I don't know what.
Totally.
You know. So that's my little Caribbean household upbringing.
I think you said before that you had come out as lesbian.
First, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So did they think that was a phase, or they also thought your like trans identity was a phase? Like what?
See, it's interesting though, because I feel like when I came out as a lesbian, that was a phase. But my identity as a man of trans experience is more like, oh, this must be real.
Okay.
This is the real deal. There really wasn't any question, and I think also because I was older.
Okay.
I was like, when I first started utilizing HRT, I was like 25.
Okay.
So I think it was more of a respect thing, like you're an adult now, as opposed to when I was 13, 14. It's like, well, how do you know who you are? And I kind of understand that because I also think that people should take their time to understand who they are. But I knew I loved women from young.
Jump.
Yeah, from jump.
Got it. Yeah, I had an interesting experience. So my family's from Haiti.
Okay.
My mom had been a single parent from maybe around the time I was 10 or 12. I can't really remember. So my father's not really been in the picture. Like I speak to him on the phone and stuff like that, but we haven't really seen each other for years. But so like my mom was like mom and dad for the house. I have one older brother. For me, and also my mom's like super religious. I mean, like she's in love with Jesus. Like that's if he came down right now,
I know.
Be like, oh, it's on and popping. She wild for Jesus. Okay, so so it was just interesting. Like my upbringing, like I feel like all of my being was to please my mother. Like that's who I was as a kid. Like I always wanted her to feel good and be okay, and like I took on a lot of burden as like a kid, just so that she wouldn't have to deal with certain things being a single parent. And with that, it's kind of like I just started to hide who I was because it was just easier to jump through hoops so that she would show me love, if you understand. So like being like my parent being from Haiti, and not to say like all Haitian parents are like this, but a lot of them are like hardcore. Like they're very strict. You gotta get your education. You have to be respectable. You have to, you gotta be a doctor, lawyer, a teacher, or something like that. You gotta be something big to to make their sacrifices worth it for coming to the U.S. and giving you this life, right? And for me, it was I was that kid in the church who used to preach, and I was heavily involved. I was there every weekend. I was since birth until about age 18. I was at church every weekend.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so for me, it was I never felt my first experience with a woman was when I was maybe not a woman, she was a girl. We were 5 or something, we were in the bathroom together, and she kissed me. I didn't know what it meant, but I was this feels normal. I never felt any type of way in terms of my sexual experience. People were oh, being gay is wrong, or being queer is wrong, and I'm I don't feel I didn't feel anything was wrong with it. So I'm just all right, I'm just navigating life. I think I started to feel different when I was about to hit puberty, and all my friends are oh my god, he's cute and shit, and I'm I want to, and I'm just oh, he looks good. I acknowledge attractiveness, but emotionally there was really no connection there. It was whatever. And so for me, I finally got the courage to come out when I moved out of my mother's house. The day I moved out is when I came out to her.
How was that?
That was wild. So I was moving in with my partner at the time. So my girlfriend was listen, I've been out for all these years, and I don't feel comfortable being with somebody who isn't out. I don't want to be hidden. That was it at the time. And I'll tell you what happened. I'm a changed person now. But back then, it was just important to her to be with somebody who wasn't hiding her. Sure. Who wasn't hiding who she was. So I was all right, bet, I'll come out. It was time anyway. I think I started to feel physically sick from hiding, and it just didn't feel right for me. So I have to tell her. So in the conversation with her, it wasn't she was shocked. It was more of okay, who did this to you? Who made you gay? Who made you queer? And I'm Mom, I've always this is just who I've been. Even hitting puberty, like I said before, I've had one crush on a dude, and he was queer as I think I've always just been attracted to femininity, in some respects, and that's just who I am. And so coming out to her, we talked about it, and I told her just a whole bunch of things that went on in my childhood, other than that, sexual assault and all these things that I hadn't told my mother about, how she raised me and how that affected me as a person. I told her all these things while coming out. So it was just this huge conversation. It was just all of this word vomit of everything that had occurred that she didn't really know about in my life. And then her response was Jesus will take care of it. And I'm okay, that's not what I needed to hear. So she hasn't shunned me or anything. We still talk, but every time she sees me in person, she doesn't really speak to me. So she'll speak to me on the phone, and she's okay with that. But in person, she can't. She she won't muster up the courage to just talk to me and
How long ago was that
conversation?
conversation?
That conversation was, I'm gonna say 4 years ago. Okay. 4 years ago, and I've seen my mom maybe a couple times after that.
Does she stay in New York?
No, she's in Jersey. So
okay.
I was born and raised in New Jersey,
okay.
in Elizabeth. So she's there, but it's she'll speak to me and we'll talk about what's happening in my life. Oh, I just got a master's degree, and here's where I work and here's what I do. But it's very much based on my accomplishments versus who I am as a person. If something was going on with me, she wouldn't know.
Right.
You know.
You're definitely not asking about your partner.
No, she's not asking. She doesn't ask about anything that has to do with my sexuality or Well, she'll say you could. She said said in a conversation oh, you can be who you are, but can you just grow your hair back out that type of stuff, because she doesn't like the haircut.
Yeah, because of women's glory is.
I went home for my 25th birthday. That was one time I had seen her, and she was do you cut your hair like that so people think you're a man? And on top of what you had said, for her, she was when I came out to her, she was well, don't get the surgery. And I'm I never said I was trans. Yeah. But to them, they equate it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Oh, you want to change your body. And it's no, I very much love my body. But this is my sexual orientation. They can't really differentiate the two.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, we
get
sorry,
real. But we get deep.
I'm into it. No, I'm here. I'm with it. Okay, so, me and my family were from Sudan. But I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, so right outside DC, my whole life. I used to go back for summers and stuff, but I never really lived in Sudan. But I honestly like came into my queerness really recently. Like it's been 2 years, and it sort of happened like organically, but almost like by accident. It was actually a little bit of an ego trip because I had moved to New York, and one of my friends, I had a mutual friend, she's like, oh, hey, you should, get to know other people in New York. This girl that we used to like go to college with, like had a really big crush on you while we were in school. And so she's like, oh, like if y'all want to meet up. And I was like, all right, like that's cute. I was like, I'll go see her or whatever. And then like jokes on me, because like we had like an amazing first date, and like it turned into this whole like whirlwind like weekend romance. And then we were together for like 6 months. And we definitely weren't meant to be partners because we're very different people. But I'll like always be grateful to her for like just being like the first person to like just like welcome me, introduce me to the queer community, like put up with a lot of like my honestly like ignorant like questions, and just like trying to just like figure out like what I want and who I want to be with. But in a lot of ways, like, I met like another, like my most recent ex, like right after that, and we had like a wonderful relationship, and it was really like through them that like I honestly got to know my body and like know myself. I think like unlike you, Sean, my parents were not with it, with the self-love or masturbation.
That was just my dad. That was just my dad.
Jesus. No, my family is like a very, very like religious Muslim, and so that's always the context that I grew up in. Also a single mom from when I was about like 10 years old. And so I think, especially also with like the immigrant experience, I think I always put so much on myself, like to prove to her like that it was like worth it for her to come here.
I agree with that.
Like, cause I just saw, and I have so much respect for her, even as like problematic and homophobic and et cetera as she is. Like, I'll always have so much respect for like all the sacrifices that she made to just like bring me here and like give me this life. But it's like hard, cause at the same time she'll like a lot of times like use that against me, as in like, oh, like America poisoned you. Like,
oh yeah,
it's because we brought you here. Like, and it's like that's not really how it works. Like maybe because I'm in America, I've been like exposed, but like I feel free because of that. Like sometimes I try to picture my life like if I just like grew up in Sudan, and just what it would have looked like.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Like I feel like there's queer people everywhere, but I just don't feel like people have the freedom or to live their lives loudly or like as they can. And so like coming here and being in America and being first generation and like being able to explore that part of yourself is a privilege. And so it's just like it's just like interesting for me to see, like I could walk down, like I could pinpoint like visibly queer people, if I could say that, like walking down the street, but like growing up I felt like I didn't see any. And I think my mom really worked to like protect me from a lot of things. There was just so many things that I did not see because she just protected us so much. My mom is very risk averse, so like you weren't going to sleep at nobody's house. You weren't going to that party. Prom, you're not going there either. Like TV, like my mom was extreme. Like we have TV or internet in the house for like the last few years, like growing up. Like she was like that. Like you got your Bible, you going to church.
Yours a little worse than mine.
Nah, she was bugging. But like, so there was just certain things that I didn't even know how to protect myself from in relationships. Like knowing about like toxic relationships or people's mental health. Like I just always assumed the best in everyone, right? And it's like if I had babies, I mean, not to say that my childhood was perfect. I don't think like growing up in a single parent household, it was like difficult. Like, we went through our struggles and things like that. But at the same time, there was so many things she protected us from that now I'm seeing in other people that I really wish I had that mom that I could really speak to and say like, yo, I've been going through this or that, and I really need your help on how to navigate this. I feel like now, as she's getting older, like my mom's in her 60s, now she's starting to talk about things that had happened between her and my father, and like, and talking about how she blames herself and like she should have let God choose her choose her husband or something like that. I'm like, you can't blame yourself for that. But that was like the closest we ever really came to having like a deep conversation. Because to even ask questions is like, oh, you're disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
disrespectful.
You're a child.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, me and my mom have never gotten into it, and I know it's coming, like when I'm ready.
Yeah.
But like she doesn't. I haven't come out to her. Like my first partner that I was with actually like a little bit problematic was just like, yeah, I don't really think like you're queer if you don't come out like to your parents, and I'm like, that's
Not how
a
it works.
personal
Right.
opinion. I'm like,
Yeah.
that maybe is how you want to run your life, but I don't think that's not an absolute statement that you can make about like my queerness. And so I'm gearing up for that conversation. I'm trying to like, me and my therapist are working on my just like the tools and like how to approach a conversation like that for it to be like somewhat productive. But I don't know, it's interesting because it's also like I'm also very like attracted to men, and that's also like a part of my sexuality. So it's like if I like end up with a man, like my queerness is still always a part of me.
Yeah.
That doesn't, I don't want it
Doesn't
to be
dismiss.
something, right?
Yeah,
It
it's
doesn't
not
dismiss
dismissed.
it, and it doesn't, I don't know, it's just complicated. So we'll see.
But is that necessary? Do we have to come out?
Sometimes I honestly think about that, and I'm like, is it selfish of me to like inflict that upon her? Because all I know is like, what I know about my mother is
Well,
all
don't
it's
say
gonna do
inflict,
is.
that's a horrible word.
No, I know that's a very
But-
serious
but-
verb, but like
I
it's gonna
understand,
cause
yeah.
her like so much pain.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like in the black community we should, because I feel like then that puts us in a space like when I was talking about earlier, my cousin, when I told her, hey, at the time, hey, I identify as this, I like women. Her whole thing was, how do you feel about being the only person in the family? Because the Jamaican side, how do you feel about being the only person in the family who is out? And I'm just like, who is this? And I'm just like, well, how do you know that? If we, like you said, if people keep it to themselves. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like we should have that conversation, because then if we have more of those conversations, those same black folks who are killing and hurting other people, maybe it will stop, because then you're going to realize, well, okay, I have this person in my family. Sometimes it takes that person in your family to think twice.
Right.
Sometimes.
Hopefully. God, it's just
What is-
ridiculous.
Well, what was it like for you growing up? Because we
Yeah.
haven't talked about that yet.
I grew up in Germany. I was born and raised overseas. My mother was in the military, and she was also a single mother from the time I was probably like 8 or so on. And she had 2 girls before me, and then me, and I was like, the boy that she wanted.
Yeah.
And I remember talking about being gay, and she was so mad about it, because she was like, I prayed to God for a boy, and now you're telling me that now I just have 3 daughters. And I'm like, oh my God, like, chill, bro. Like, I'm a top. Anyway, but it's just, I think that I think the worst part though of growing up is that my sister is mentally handicapped, and so I always was kind of taking care of her, and I had a single mom who was a nurse, and she worked crazy hours, and then she also went to school when I was a kid. I'm telling you, your mom is my mom.
Yeah.
But I remember one time I was caught making out with my neighbor. I had to be in like middle school or something, and she brought us upstairs to the table, called the neighbor's mom. The mom came over, and I was like, I'm not a fag. And she was like, okay, cool. So she went back back to her house with her son, and my mom like took me upstairs and had her belt in hand, And she was like, I have to discipline you for this, because you just have to know that this is not something that you can do. It's against the word of God. It's whatever. And then I'll never forget her saying, and if you touch your sister, I will kill you. And I was like, you definitely don't have to worry about that, because I am gay.
Yeah.
And like, I think that the horrible thing that, she's from Augusta, Georgia, and her family is super religious. My dad was a pastor. And I think that they kind of put gay people as just like deviant, like period. Like
Gotcha.
you are everything. Like you want to do,
Pedophile,
all of
Gotcha.
this. So she first had to separate that as I was growing up, because I came out gay. Like I think actually I was a C-section baby, so I've never touched it. Okay, so I'm a super gold star gay. So everybody always knew, that I was gay. And I think over time, over time, I think that she kind of had to accept that, that wasn't changing. And so her views changed a little bit as to what that means to be a gay person. But even to this day, she's still very whatever about it because she's super religious. And I think maybe she had a friend when she was growing up, maybe when she was maybe a young 20s, who died of HIV. Okay. And so I think that also has like a thing. So not only am I sinning against God and I'm going to hell for this thing and eternal damnation, but then I'm going to also suffer here on earth for these actions, So having a parent who thinks like that, who's not educated about the community, who's not educated about HIV, who's not educated about just what it is to just be a gay person, I think is so damaging, because there's so many kids out there who aren't like me, who I mean, my mom just had to accept it. Like, it was just like, that's not going anywhere. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I mean, she tried so many things. Like, I mean, there was a time where I had a little thing with my bishop where he was like trying to like brainwash me or make me, yeah, exactly, and I was like, look, lady. So
these extremes. Yeah. But what in these diasporic experiences do you want to change? Like, in your experience,
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, I think that representation is super important, because even as shallow as it may be, it starts the conversation and it lets somebody know this is a real part of the world. I didn't see gay people, especially gay black people, in film and television when I was growing up. I remember watching a show, and it was two white girls who were kissing each other, and that was when I was in high school, that I finally saw some gay stuff on television, and my mom was so taken aback. But I think that seeing, especially the black community, queer black people with stories of triumph are also important, because it's not always just us being disparaging and all these things, but just us and more than just, I love Moonlight, but more than some ghetto, like what, because all facets of us, and we're everywhere. And I think that starts the education for just the person who's not looking to be educated, you know what I mean? And so that would change what happens in the home, I think.
For me, I just need people to stop being brainwashed, honestly. So so the biggest thing for me, okay, also, like, growing up for me, like, my mom didn't teach me a lot about, like, my Haitian culture, right? Because for her, like, in her religion, like, I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, it's like God comes before culture, right? So for her, that meant, like, we didn't listen to compa, like, the music. We ate the food, like, food was always there, but, like, we didn't listen to music, like, learning that voodoo was bad, or, like, all of these things, like.
So I couldn't watch Harry Potter for a while.
But on top of that, it's like knowing that she's from the island itself, I'm pretty sure she's seen some things, right? I feel like it's like colonialism came in and, like, gave people this Bible, and, like,
that too.
You know what I'm saying? And,
how do we not think about that?
No, but in some respects, what I'm saying is, like, they gave you this book and you decided to follow it, right. And it's like, now it's like, I see, like, countries who are, like, predominantly white, or, like, white supremacists saying, like, oh my God, how are these countries so homophobic? And, like, how is this happening? How's that happening? I'm like, y'all did this. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you really look back and, like, you look at the different genders that they're used to have, and all these indigenous populations, and how now it's like, oh my God, it's this thing. I'm like, we've always existed, right? And so it's like, people are acting like this is a new conversation, like, okay, queer people just hopped out of, of nowhere, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, for me, it's just like, I think, like, anything that is overboard, like, not balanced, is a problem for me. Like, so the fact that, like, I respect my mom and her religion, but it's like, also, it's like, to what extent? Like, you don't even have a relationship with your kids anymore, because you're so connected to this. And so it's like, to me, it's like, that's what hurts me.
And I don't think we get the translations all the way right. We want to take it for the letter, what it is, and it's created by other human beings, and how perfect can that be? And if we, as people, every day evolve, why can't this? Why doesn't this?
But so, even on top of that, it doesn't even fit. Like, if you can't write a book that fits everybody.
Yeah, no.
It's just not going to happen. No. And so, for people to...
everybody poops.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, we are, even within ourselves, within this even community, we are so different. We can be so different, and so it's like there's never gonna be a thing that works for everybody.
No, never.
That's why we have so much division in the U.S.
Right.
in different countries. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's to me was like my biggest issue.
No.
I want to thank everyone for joining AURN Digital LGBT Pride Roundtable. Tune in next time.